Hello everybody, this is Freddy with Freddy Can Fly, and finally the day is here. We're going to be doing a test flight on the Bergen's Intrepid turbine model. This belongs to my good friend Vincent Mendez from Florida. So we're just going to do a real quick demonstration on how to properly fuel it with the kerosene and oil mixture, and then we'll talk about the starting sequence, and then we'll take it up and hope for the best. So let's go ahead and talk about how to fuel it real quick. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do when fueling up the machine, obviously we've got a fuel-based pump. That's something we're going to need to have. Not a nitro base, but a gasoline with the correct lines. One end of our pump is going to have our clunk line on it, and we're just going to go ahead and drop that into the little jug we've got here. And then our other line should have our fuel filter on it, and then we're going to have our probe. And then your fuel line is going to be located right here. It's got the little stopper that you can actually pull this out. And then just go ahead and remove the stopper. It's a pretty tight fit. And then you'll want to put your probe in. And then just a good keynote, we will demonstrate this, but once it's full of fuel, you're going to need to pinch this line when you remove the probe. That way fuel doesn't come spewing out. And essentially, with a hand crank, it's going to take a long time for us to fill it up, so I'm going to start turning. We'll start getting some fuel into the lines here. Let's see if we can get some going. There we go. And just to talk for a minute, you'll see that the fuel is rushing from these yellow lines into the bottles. One's coming out of the top. Those are going to be our vent lines, and those actually come out right down here. We're going to try to fuel the bottle until we see fuel come out of the vent lines, and this is actually important. And then we're going to want to suck the fuel out a little bit. That way we know the bottles are topped off, but we need to leave a little bit of an air pocket in the top of these tanks. That way there's room for the pressure of the vent lines. You don't want to leave it all the way filled up to here because you'll have issues with starting the system. So fill it till you see fuel, and then back it down a good couple of turns, or if you're using an electric pump, whatever the case is, make sure you've got an air bubble, and then we'll go ahead and disconnect. So I'm going to fill this up the rest of the way, and we'll come back and do a review. Okay, so we've gotten to that point now to where the fuel is going to start coming out of the vent lines, and so you'll see here, as I start to turn my pump, that fuel is going to slowly start to come out of there. And it's really hard to see with these kinds of bottles, but there it is right there. It looks like it's kind of coming out of the... Oh, there we go. It's coming out of them both at the same time, so we can tell that we're getting even fuel into both bottles. And you'll notice, as it comes out there, I'm going to go ahead and start to reverse the direction of the pump. Just a couple of turns, maybe like 5-6 turns, something like that. Maybe even 10 turns. I just want to make sure I get a really good air bubble inside of there. I'm more concerned about that than getting that couple extra seconds of flight time. So, and I feel like right there should be pretty good. So what I'll do when I get to here, just to kind of clear my lines out, is I'm going to pump it forward one turn, a little bit, okay. And this fuel line's kind of hard. You can install a clamp or something if you need to, but I'm just going to lightly compress it with pliers. We don't want to damage anything. And then take our little plug. We'll insert that back in. And then push our fuel line back in. So now we're all ready to fly as far as fuel's concerned. So let's talk about the initial setup, checking the system, and then actually test firing the motor. Alrighty, Mr. Mendez, and just a real good tip for you. When you're carrying this machine fully fueled, it's pretty heavy. Most helis nowadays you can just carry right from the main rotor, but I feel it'll be a little bit safer for you if you carry it from the boom and the main rotor. It's a little awkward, but puts the stress off of the main rotor shaft. So carry it out to a safe distance, and we'll get her started. Woo! Alrighty, so here we go. We're going to do the initial startup. Motor comes second, electronics come first. So you'll notice on here, we've got two different connectors. We've got the black tipped ones with a yellow pack. This is going to be for the ECU. This is going to basically power all the starting sequence and everything of the motor, and also maintain the starter and the motor, the solenoid solenoid valve, sorry. And then we've got our other pack over here, which is just a red Dean's. And this one here is going to be for the main receiver, or the flybarless unit. And that's going to be turned on and off with this switch here. And then we'll see everything boot up. So we're going to do that first and check the beast X, make sure it's safe to fly before we start the motor. First thing we're going to do is we'll just go ahead and power on our radio. And you're going to want to make sure on the radio, this is before even turning on the beast X. Low stick, but you got to make sure we have low trim also. Not half trim or full trim, all the way down. And then obviously we want all switches in the off positions. So that all looks good. So we'll come over here and we will plug this in to there. Got a little Velcro strap right here that we can kind of tidy that down if we need to. Okay. Then just simply go ahead and push your switch on, and you want to make sure you let the helicopter be completely stationary. Try not to bump or disturb it. And you'll notice on top here the Beast X will do a series of lights. What we're waiting for is for the swash plate to jump up and down, and that'll signify that the system initialized properly. So there goes there, okay? Now just some bench talk. When we look at this Beast X system, you can tell we've got a violet light. Hopefully you can see that here in the daylight. That signifies that we're in rate mode right now. We want to be sure that we are in heading hold mode before we actually even start the motor or initialize flight. And the way we're going to do that is we've got our switch here, which is labeled rudder DR, this top right switch. You'll notice when I hit this switch, this LED light is going to turn to blue. Okay, so that's off and that's on. This tells us we're in heading hold mode, so we're ready to fly from there. Okay, next thing we're going to do is check our overall directions and travels. Left stick collective should move the swash plate up, down, elevator forward, backwards, and aileron right and left. That all looks good. Next thing we're going to check is the sensory direction of the swash plate. So if you just tilt it's a big heli, so it's kind of hard to lift up. So if you tilt forward, the swash plate should tilt backwards. Backwards, it should move forwards. If we go right, it moves left. If we go left, it moves right. Okay, always check that. Safest thing in the world, because if that were to be reversed for some reason, it could be potentially dangerous. So let's go ahead and let's check the tail real quick also. Okay, what we're going to look for on the tail, it's kind of the same thing. We're going to want to make sure that we'll put it in rate mode for now, so you'll notice the rudder always returns back to center. First, we're checking direction. If I give left rudder, this slider should move to the right, and it does. If I give right rudder, it goes to the left. So if we flip into heading hold mode, if I give left rudder, you'll notice it stays over to the right, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to just simply rotate the tail, and this slider should automatically start compensating back towards this hub here. There we go. And it does, okay? So we know our heading hold mode is working, gyro compensation is in the right orientation, and now we can go ahead and we can start the motor. Okay, so we've done all of the initial tests of the fly barless unit, servos, we checked everything, no play in the head, anything strange. So now we're going to get ready to start up the motor. You're going to need to get your data terminal unit, and once you know that the motor starts appropriately, you don't have to do this every time, but I still highly recommend it just to make sure that everything's test firing on all cylinders, so to speak. You're going to plug your data terminal into this right here. It's labeled data, I believe T/PC, okay? And you'll note the orientation of the wires. It's got brown, red, and yellow. We've got brown, red, and yellow. So we're just going to simply plug that in. And you'll notice here that our data terminal turns on. Okay, now here's the important things to read on the data terminal. We're going to take our radio and our data terminal, okay? Right now it reads trim low, gives us our temperature in the top right, 16 degrees Celsius, RPM's at 0, okay? Now you'll notice if I start to raise up my trim to the halfway position, it changes to ready. That means we can actually do the test starting sequence on the motor. Also, on the ECU, this LED turns blue when we hit half trim. This also tells us it's ready to start. So if you didn't have the data terminal, when this light's blue at half trim, that's the starting position, okay? So now that it's at this position, all we simply do is we're going to raise our stick up for like 2 seconds, you know, up, 1, 2, and then down, all the way back down. The motor will turn on, it'll turn off, and then you'll hear it turn on again, you'll hear the burner start, and then it starts the starting sequence. Since we're going to be flying, I'm actually going to unplug the data terminal and step away. But if you were doing this on the bench with the blades off or something, you can leave this plugged in, and it'll actually display the sequences as they perform. So, like test priming the motor, burner ignition, and then it'll tell you when it's actually holding a stable hover, or not a hover, but an idle, and then you'll be safe to fly from there. And then once you get your half trim started and the motor is running, we're going to move this trim all the way up to full. That's your idle RPM right there. So once this is at full, you now have full control over the throttle stick. So now we can start to lift off. So I'm going to unplug this and we'll go ahead and start the motor. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go ahead and get it started. I did forget to mention one thing. You're going to want to make sure you plug in your black tip connector. That way everything's got power for the start. So once again, just to recap, we've checked all the Beast X. We're going to trim up to half. Blue light should be on, or your data terminal should read ready, okay? And we're going to step away when we do this, but we're going to stick up. 1, 2, 2 seconds at the top, and then drop it back down. Okay, so here we go. We're going to get ready to start. We're at half trim. We got the blue light. We're just going to simply stick up 2 seconds and then stick down, and it should start the ignition sequence. So here we go. We're going to go up and then down. And it's going to be quiet for a minute, and then we should hear it start the sequence here. So once you get it up to your half trim and it's idling, we're going to slowly increase this till we get to full trim. You want to let it run, let it warm up a little bit. Once we get to full trim position, now we'll have access to our throttle stick, and then we can get ready to lift off. We'll go to half stick, which is 0 degrees of pitch, and we should lift off just above. So basically that's all there is to it. I'm going to give it a couple of test flights. Mendez, you're going to love this thing, dude. It's a lot of fun, so enjoy.